Well, joining me now in Canberra is LNP Senator James McGrath, who's based in Queensland. Now, James, the Senate this week must have been a schmozzle, really, with these pious hypocrites in the Greens targeting the Prime Minister for a very human reaction.
Oh, totally. I mean, the Greens used to be the fairies at the bottom of the garden, but now they're the hypocrites at the bottom of the garden. It's been a very difficult week here in Canberra, and what has been made more difficult is how the Greens, who are a bunch of hypocrites, as shown by those screen grabs you just put up there, those tweets, and what the Greens have tried to muddy the waters by trying to politicise the issue. You've had Adam Bandt come out and try and put words in the Prime Minister's mouth. You've had the behaviour of the Greens in the Senate, and we are dealing with a really serious issue here. We are dealing with someone who has been allegedly raped in this building, which should be the safest building in the country, and we've got the Greens, these pious, sanctimonious hypocrites when it comes to not just these issues, but all issues. And this is what your viewers, I think, do understand. These are the Greens who want zero emissions by 2050, but they'll all fly business class down to Canberra. They'll get in their nice big white com cars and drive around the place. These are the Greens who want a cap on donations, but took the largest private donation in the history of this country, over $1 million. The Greens are rank hypocrites with everything they do, because it's a classic case of they tell us what we should be doing and how we should live our lives, but they don't follow their own script when it comes to themselves.
This is a huge problem because they get a lot of column inches from the mainstream media that rarely question their hypocrisy, their backflips, their contradictions, their policy stances. I mean, you could go back to when Bob Brown was campaigning against hydroelectricity and was spruiking the benefits of coal power in Tasmania, I think, back 30 or 40 years ago. So they are a mob that needs to be held to account, and I'm determined to do it here every single week on this show, and I know you are in Canberra as well. But there's plenty more going on, and you've had a particular interest in what's going on in China, and I think many Australians are awake to what you've been telling us for quite some time.
Oh, totally. Well, China is not our friend. And China is not a friend of a peaceful, rules-based order in the world. Hong Kong, it is gone. Okay? Hong Kong is no longer a part of one country, two systems. Hong Kong is now fully owned by the communist government in China. And what we've got to be aware of is that China is slowly picking off countries one by one. And you only have to look at what happened before World War I and before World War II, when you had so-called emerging powers, and how they tried to grab power was by picking wars. So the question for us here in Australia is, what are we going to do when troops land on Taiwan? Because my view is we must always defend democracy and freedom. My view is we've got to make sure that we really step up in the South Pacific. We've really got to make sure that Papua New Guinea, which actually is our most important foreign relationship, a lot of people don't really understand about Papua New Guinea, but Papua New Guinea is so important to us. And let me be blunt. And
it's been compromised already by China, isn't it? Because aren't they spending millions, tens of millions of dollars building a fishing port there, which is just big enough to take their biggest warships?
Totally. Yeah, what China are doing in Papua New Guinea is not what you call your classic foreign investment. It's what I would call your classic buying off a government and making sure that China gets that little bit closer to Australia. There is a reason why the son of the Prime Minister of the Solomons is going to university in Beijing. Now, he might have an interest in Chinese history or learning Mandarin, but the reason he's there is because he's been given a scholarship. I mean, they've played this game for thousands of years. They know exactly what they are doing in trying to build up influence across the Indo-Pacific. And it is a massive wake-up call, because my view is economic war has all but been declared on this country. They've used COVID as an excuse, but you look what they've done in the wine industry, what they're doing in the beef industry, what they're doing to barley. They're slowly going through sector by sector, giving us a poke in the eyes and the poke in the ribs. And I think Australians are finally waking up to it, that China are not our friends. We should try and have a trading relationship with them, but they're not the friends of peace in the Indo-Pacific.
That's exactly right. You can buy something from them, sell something from them, but you don't want to invite them home to meet the folks in regular people parlance. Now, speaking of who's not our friends anymore, Facebook. They've unfriended Australia. How's that played out in Canberra this week?
Oh, it's played out pretty badly. And I don't know who was advising Facebook on this, but it's actually brought everybody together. And when I say everybody, not just people here in Canberra, I don't know if you're on Facebook, Corey, but I am. And I have watched the outrage from my friends and family who are so angry with Facebook at the moment about what they're doing. Because what it is, it's about bullying. It's about bullying Australia. It's about bullying the government of Australia. And this is what China is a bully. Facebook are using the tactics of China, and it's just not going to work. Because what's happened is the rest of the world are going, oh, hang on, what's going on down there in Australia? That Facebook are trying to cut off effectively the news sources that people get through their main social media platform. Facebook, this is a massive own goal for them. They've effectively not just unfriended Australia, they've unfriended the world, and they've probably unfriended themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they've done enormous damage to themselves, and I hope people wake up. I closed my Facebook account, I closed my Twitter account, simply because if they're going to filter and censor people from talking mainstream politics because they don't like the politics, then I'll find another forum. Thank you very much. Now, James, you're an outlier here yourself, all right? You are not fully embracing this warm and cosy 2015 zero emissions target that the Prime Minister seems to have fallen into lockstep with the Greens and the Labor Party. What's going on, mate? You're a dissent in the ranks?
No, there's no dissent in the ranks. I'm a senator for Queensland. I'm always going to stand up for Queensland, and you'll find that lots of other MPs and senators from Queensland, I think, will have the same view as me. And my position is very simple, is that I will not support any targets or any plans for 2050 targets if it leads to one job loss in Queensland or hurts one business. So what I'm saying is bring forward your costed plans, bring forward what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and let's have a proper discussion about it. Because what we're seeing at the moment, it's classic bumper sticker economics. The left are saying, you know, they've got a bumper sticker, you know, zero emissions by 2050, and that all sounds great, and everybody sings Kumbaya, but you're going, hang on, how are we going to power the electricity in this country? How are we going to power manufacturing in this country? Yeah, how are winter's coming up. How are we going to warm people's houses? How are we going to, when we get summer, how are we going to cool people's houses? So we've got to make sure we have considered discussions about these public policy issues, and it should not be left to the left to define these issues. We've got to make sure those who are on the centre-right, who believe in smaller government, greater freedom and lower taxes, are in there defending jobs and defending business. Because you mentioned Bob Brown before. Bob Brown, as far as I'm concerned, should be given honorary life membership of the LNP for what he did during the last federal campaign in Queensland. Because I tell you what, Queenslanders love nothing better than Southerners coming up and telling us what to do. I mean, the cheek of that man, he got in a car, you know, powered by petrol or diesel, and drove into Queensland and was telling us how to vote, but also what to do with our lives. You know, he was as popular as a pork chop in a synagogue, and quite frankly, I want him to come back at the next federal election. Bob Brown, spend as much time in Queensland as possible, please. This is a message from the Liberal National Party.
All right, that's given me a great segue into this, because you Queenslanders are fiercely parochial and you like to support each other, and you're talking about being popular in a pork chop. Well, the king of talking about himself, that's your Queensland mate Kevin Rudd, finally got his day in the Senate today. He went on rant after rant about News Corp, as you probably would have expected. But I think it's important to look at some of our dear friends in the Greens and their questioning of News Corp's Executive Chairman Michael Miller. Have a listen.
Does Rupert Murdoch like picking winners? Does he ever go into the newsroom? Does News Corporation have an issue with women? Why do you think some politicians are fearful of Rupert Murdoch? Do you accept the assertion that News Corp makes or breaks Prime Ministers? Have you ever spoken to Rupert Murdoch about his political views? What is Rupert Murdoch's view on the science of climate change? What do you say to the assertion that there is an organised opposition between the Murdoch empire and the carbon lobby?
Well, James, is that evidence that you don't need a triple-digit IQ to become a senator?
Oh, well, maybe to become a Green senator, because they are sometimes 2 steps along the evolutionary chain from moss. But and that senator is well renowned for her intellectual ability or lack thereof. But what is interesting is that the Greens have joined or are part of this giant conspiracy that's going on, that News Limited is governed by Rupert Murdoch, who's some sort of evil person who's trying to take over the world. And you go, hang on, seriously? Like, News Limited is a private company. It is a company that's in the business of selling news. It is owned by shareholders, and if it's not performing, then the shareholders get to make that ultimate decision. But as for Kevin Rudd, mate, that guy, he is like the mayor of Sooksville. He's put the whinge into Whinge Town. Like, if he didn't have his wife subsidising his lifestyle, he's actually 1 step away from pushing a Coles trolley along the street with a couple of cats in it and a few empty Coles bags, muttering at the sky. I mean, he's the former Prime Minister of this country. He should be holding himself with greater regard rather than buying into green conspiracy theories about News Limited. And as for what he said about Sky, like, seriously.
Yeah, it's just appalling. The gold standard in former Prime Ministers in my lifetime have been John Howard, Tony Abbott and Julia Gillard, quite frankly. I think credit where credit's due. They've acted with dignity out of office. James McGrath, that's all I've got time for tonight, but thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your weekend and keep giving it to them in Canberra.
Likewise. Thanks, Corey. Toodaloo.